I think history is somewhat which is required. The reason is it has some connection with the bootstrap. Fine. And I think you would find it as an interesting concept because there are rarely some chances that when we used to discuss the history of any software. Anyhow, um, see, unlike HTML version, other versions, I would say, HTML5 is developed by two separate groups. One is your W3C group, which is World Wide Web Consortium, and second is WHATWG group, which is known as Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group. So what I'm just trying to say that HTML5 is basically being developed by two groups. You might be aware about that whatever the protocols, standards and rules and regulations we have on internet, those are actually developed by W3C, which is Worldwide Web Consortium. But this HTML5 is basically being developed by these two separate groups. And I think you might be aware about as well because most of you are professors, assistant professors, and you are working in the field of computer science. That HTML was actually created by Tim Berners-Lee in 1991. So once it was created by Tim Berners-Lee, the other things were handed over to W3C. So during your 1991 to 1999, there were four versions of HTML that were created, and those were known as HTML version 1 to HTML version 4. In 1990, by this is by W3C, that what they had just realized that HTML is a very standard or a very basic language which is non-interactive in itself. So they had just realized because the times are changes and yet they need some sort of an interactivity in HTML. So in 2000, what they had done, W3C, I'm talking about right now, W3C, they recommend XHTML1 version. So means in 2000, XHTML1 version comes into picture, and you might be aware about XHTML is basically about incorporating XML languages or might be in adding some interactivity in HTML. So if you might have worked on HTML during 2000 or 2004, you might be aware about that during that particular time, we guys were mostly working on XHTML rather than on HTML. Fine. In 2004, the development of this HTML, it was closed by W3C and they had started focusing on XHTML only. So that is what I'm just trying to say you, that during 2004, we were actually not working on HTML, we were actually working on XHTML. Fine. So once all those things were happening, uh, I'm just trying to tell you one experience of mine during 2005 to 2006 when we were working on HTML or XHTML. Whenever we used to create some websites using HTML or XHTML, during that particular time, div tags were not that much prevalent. We were working on table tags. So problem was that the table tag was very much visible and very much, you can say, in a comfort zone on Explorer. But when we used to check the websites in other browsers, they were not very much visible. Visible in that particular sense, they were visible, but the tables seems to be a little bit distracted from their place where we used to originally have created the tables and all other type of things. Means there were some issues in the layout, or you can say in the visibility of tables in different browsers, because there was a problem of cross browser compatibility during that particular time. So it is in 2004 to 2006 that there comes a group of developers who realized that there is a problem with the what you can call it as browsing of HTML. So they created a group which is known as WHATWG group. Fine. And they just try to come out with a HTML version which is going to be supportive on all browsers. Means if you have used the table tag and if you are viewing that particular website which has been created in tables on Internet Explorer, it should look similar on other browsers as well. So with that particular aim, they have started the group which is known as WHATWG group. And even the W3C, which was known as the king of internet, they have also supported this particular group. So in 2008, actually, the first public draft of HTML5 is released, and it was released by WHATWG group. So if anybody asks you who has created HTML5, it is not W3C, but actually it is created by WHATWG group. Fine. And in 2012, actually, now what happens means there was already a king in the area of internet, which was W3C. And then there comes another competitor, which was WHATWG group. And that competitor also started creating its what you can call as protocols or some sort of rules. So there started some sort of what you can say conflict between these two groups. And during this 2012, this W3C and WHATWG group, they decided to separate the development of HTML5. So now see, this is a very interesting thing actually. Now what has happened? Now W3C has started development of HTML5 on its own, and WHATWG group is already working on HTML5, and they are just working separately from W3C on HTML5. So now what is the difference? Because now there is a confusion among the developers that actually who is owning HTML5, whose HTML5 we are working on, is that a W3C or WHATWG? So I'm trying to tell you a very interesting fact. The fact is W3C now is working on definitive standard of HTML5. Definitive standard. Keep that particular thing in mind. Definitive standard. Definitive standard means, let us suppose if you have brought some tags or some what you call it as some rules and regulations in one programming language, it is not just going to change across during that particular version. Means, let us suppose if I have brought some new tags in HTML5, I'm not going to change those tags in that version. But if I need to just bring some changes in that tag, or might be I have to just make that tag redundant, uh, what I have to do, I have to just come out with a new version. Fine. So it means that is actually known as definitive standard. Definitive standard means whatever you have brought in one version, it is just going to be a standard protocol, and it is not going to change across during that particular version. So W3C is actually working on that standard of HTML5, and WHATWG is actually working on living standard. This is very interesting. Living standard of HTML5. Living standard means, uh, see, if you might be working in HTML5, you might be seeing that in HTML5, daily, not exactly daily, on regular basis, there comes some sort of a documentation where they try to just bring out some changes in the tags properties, or might be they are just trying to bring out some new tags in HTML5. So it means living standard means you can bring out the changes in the pattern, in the standards, in the tags of HTML. So that actually makes something a living standard for a programming language. Definitive means if you have brought something, it is just going to be stick as it is in that version. If you want to bring some changes, you have to come out with a new version. Fine. So currently, actually, because of all those things, we are not working on HTML5, we are working on HTML 5.3. So because it has become a sort of a living standard, or and a sort of a definitive standard, so because of that particular thing, currently we are working in HTML 5.3. So it is a mixture of definitive plus living standard, which on which we are currently working. And you might have just seen that what was the advantages of just bringing out HTML5, because currently it has become all cross browser compatible. Secondly, SEO has become incredibly good by using HTML5. And you might be aware about that previously, when we used to add some sort of a video or audio into HTML, we have to actually take the help of Flash or some external softwares like jQuery or JS sort of a thing. But currently with HTML5, we have the video and the audio tags, which are very much prevalent with us. So these are some advantages of using HTML5. And beside that particular thing, the basic and the most important change which HTML5 has brought is regarding the semantic elements. You might have seen that particular thing. So I'm not going to repeat that, but I'm just going to show you one slide to just, I hope my Screen is visible. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is what I'm just trying to say. This is the most important thing which HTML5 has actually brought into picture, and that is the semantic elements. You might have seen that particular thing, but because I have a problem that I never started the software which has been assigned to me as it is. I used to give some sort of a history and all other type of a thing. So that is the thing. So please bear me for another 5 minutes. So this was HTML4 or the previous version. So let us suppose you know that your website is basically being divided into various sections. So let us suppose if you want to create some sort of header, or if you have to create the navigation bar, then the body part, then the footer section. Either we used to have the table tags, or we used to use with the div tags. Div is the most stable, you can say, tag of HTML. So we developers actually prefer div tag. So if let us suppose I have to create header, so what I used to do, I used to create a div and give it an ID as a header, so that the other person who is just going to come across through my code, he or she would come to know that this is the header section, and whatever the elements have been placed in that particular thing, this is for the header. So that actually means in the previous versions we have to create the divs and we have to assign the IDs. But with HTML5 the things have been changed, and now rather than just creating the divs, we have, you can say, a new element or a new tag header in itself. So rather than creating div, assigning it an ID, now I have a tag as header. If I have to create a sort of a navigation bar, rather than just creating a div and assigning an ID as a nav, I have a simple tag which is nav. Fine. If I have to create some sort of body text, and under that I have to create some sort of articles, and under articles I have to create some small sections. Sections mean the sort of a paragraphs. Then I can just use the article tag. Then under that I can use the section tag, or might be section tag, and under that I can create the article tag. It's vice versa. And for footer, there is a separate footer tag. So this is actually the latest pattern in HTML5 which has been used. And beside that particular thing, the important change the HTML5 has brought is regarding the doc type. You might be seeing the first line, doc type HTML. It actually depicts that what document type you are trying to use, or how your different browsers are just going to, what you can call it as, um, I can just define that as how they are just going to, um, how the different browsers are just going to realize that you are working on HTML. So because of that particular thing, I am just going to show you. Previously, we have to write a long code, means we have to just give some additional parameters under doc type in the previous versions of HTML, to just realize different browsers that we are working on HTML, so that they can understand that yes, the developer is working on HTML5. But oh, sorry, on HTML. Now with HTML5, they have just made the life easy, and now you need not to write the other parameters, and simply you have to just write doc type HTML. That's it. As soon as you are just going to write that particular thing, the browsers are just going to understand that yes, the developer is working on HTML. Fine. So this is the important change which HTML5 has brought, and this is the whole layout of HTML5, means how you can use the semantic elements and how you can create the stuff. So you can see under body we have the header section. Under header you can just create some sort of navigation bars and whatever the other meta tags and other things, whatever you want to create. Then you have your section. Under section you can create articles, or it could be article, and under article you can create the sections, and then you have the footer and all other type of a thing. Fine. So these are some semantic elements which has actually may make our life easier in HTML5. It is article aside. For figure, you have a direct figure option with you. Then you can give the fig caption, the footer, the header, navigation bar, and the section. So this is something, a brief about HTML. Fine. So now the question arises, we have to actually do the concept of bootstrap. Now, what exactly is this bootstrap? See, you might be aware about that HTML or HTML5 is the core technology markup language of internet. Fine. This is not a programming language. This is a markup language. Fine. So if that particular thing is not a programming language. You need some help from other programming languages if you want to make it interactive, or if you want to add some sort of an interactive elements into that particular thing. So with this particular aim, actually HTML5 has brought into picture. So now you might also be aware about that whenever we work on any sort of a programming language, or might be when we are working on any sort of a website, I will make the things easier. If let us suppose if you have to work on website, you have to create two ends. One is known as your front end, and second is basically known as your back end. Back end is a sort of a database which you basically have to create, or you have to just connect with your front end. So what Bootstrap is? Bootstrap is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework for developing your responsive websites. I hope I am audible and you might be understanding that what I'm just trying to tell you. Otherwise, what I'm just going to do, just let me open the PPT as well, so that some slides would be visible to you. Yeah. Fine. So first of all, I am just letting you know about the Bootstrap. So what I just try to tell you that Bootstrap is the front end framework of HTML. Front end framework of HTML, and this is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework for developing your responsive websites. So this is what you have to keep in mind. If you have to create a sort of a responsive website, you basically need a sort of a front end framework. Fine. So for using that, rather than just using HTML and just try to come out with the means, if have you guys worked with CSS till now? Hello, if anybody can answer me this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you have worked with CSS, you might have seen that CSS is a sort of a cascading style sheets which are used to style your HTML tags. So if let us suppose I have to create a basic website in HTML, I'm just going to take the help of the tags as well as CSS, and I'm just going to create a website. Fine. But for that particular thing, you have to have a hold on CSS. That is the most important thing, because you might have seen that CSS, you can embed it as internally or externally, or it could be your inline CSS. There are different type of CSS which we can use, and there are different sort of options in CSS. So if you have to create a simple static website in HTML, you have to have a hold on CSS. But now the problem was that because CSS is itself a very complex in itself, and developers actually need some sort of a framework in which they have to just like do some simple copy and paste, then they can just try to set the properties of those CSS. So that's why that front end frameworks have actually come into picture. I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. To make the life easier for your developers, specifically for the front end developers, this front end frameworks have been created. Fine. So anyhow, so what I'm just trying to tell you that this is the most popular front end framework for HTML. Fine. And beside that, have you ever listened about the another popular front end frameworks for HTML? Have you ever worked with any popular front end framework of HTML? I will just name few of the frameworks. The first is React. Second is Vue.js. Third is your Angular. Fourth is your Foundation. Fifth is your Materialize. Sixth is your Ember. Seventh is your Svelte. And the another one we are doing is the Bootstrap. So these are all your front end frameworks for HTML. Fine. But the most popular one is Bootstrap. Why? The reason is Bootstrap has some predefined and pre-built CSS components and helpers, which we simply have to just place it in the code, and it is just going to make our life easier. We need not to write the complete, you can say, code for CSS or something like. We simply have to just copy paste that stuff. So you can just call it as a copy paste type of a platform, but obviously you need some sort of a, what I can call it as some sort of an understanding that how you have to do the copy paste, and beside that particular thing, the rest is the history when we are just going to create the pages. Anyhow, now whenever I used to give some sort of corporate lectures, this question always actually being raised to me that, ma'am, which particular framework we should use, front end framework we should use. See, I had already given you the name of 8 front end frameworks. Fine. And because I am just trying to tell you something about the Bootstrap, so I'm not just going to say that other frameworks are not good in themselves. They are also good. But which framework you should use, it actually depends upon various questions. The first question is the skill level. Means if you are good in programming language, if you are good in CSS, if you are very good in just understanding the code and other type of things, it is always better to just go with React or Vue.js or with Angular. Fine. Second thing, if you need some sort of responsive designs, I hope you understand what do you meant by term responsive design. Responsive design is when the website is just going to take the shape of the width of the device, whatever you are using, that actually make it a responsive website. So it is like if you are working on mobile, it is just going to take the shape of a mobile. If you are working on some iPad or iPod, it is just going to take the shape of iPad and iPod. So this is actually known as a responsive website or responsive design. So if you have to create a sort of a responsive design, fine. This also determines that which particular framework you should use. So if you need a responsive website, I always recommend that the person should go with the Bootstrap, because in Bootstrap, there is minimal things what you have to do to make it as a responsive website, because the CSS and all other code has already been written on the back end. So you need not to do much to just make that particular thing as responsive. Fine. Then the third thing is about the appearance. Appearance means what sort of appearance you want from your website, the looks what you want. Because Bootstrap is one software which has n number of templates available on internet. Because secondly, it has extensive documentation which is available for Bootstrap. So I always recommend that if you don't have a very good skill level or a programming knowledge, you should go with the Bootstrap. If you need a sort of an appearance and if you need a sort of a responsive design, you should go with the Bootstrap. Fine. And if you need sort of an extensive documentation or you need a well developed community where you can ask the questions related to your website and all other type of things, you should go with Bootstrap. Otherwise, React, Vue.js, and Angular, these are very popular front end frameworks as well. But the problem is somewhat with the skill level. Means if you have a very good programming knowledge, then I would recommend then just go with this React, Vue.js, and Angular. We as a developers actually work. It we works on the basis of client requirements. Sometimes the client says that you have to create the website on React. We used to create that in React. Somebody wants in Vue.js, we used to create in Vue.js. Somebody wants in Angular. If somebody has no any option, means they just came out with a lame idea that they just want to have a website, we try to use Bootstrap. Fine. Okay. So this was something about Bootstrap, but another point I have to just tell you about the Bootstrap is the Bootstrap was initially created in 2011 by Twitter. Fine. So it is actually a product of Twitter and it was created in 2011. Fine. So why use Bootstrap? Here I have just tried to give some pointers because it has increased the development speed. I had told you what is the reason why it has increased the development speed, because you need not to write a complete codes in this framework. There are some predefined components and helpers which you can use and through which you can create your website. And responsive website, I had already told you, this is the very big advantage of Bootstrap. Then you need not to repeat the things in the projects, because simply you can save that particular project as a template and you can reuse that particular thing. It adds consistency in the sense because it has already a defined library of components and helpers. So it is a sort of a consistent things. And cross browser compatibility, yes, this is again a very important point, because I had told you that HTML5 is basically being created with the aim of bringing out cross browser compatibility. And that is why these front end frameworks has all also brought into picture, because their purpose is to bring a cross browser compatibility. Fine. And already told you that it has a large community, it has extensive documentation available, and it is customizable means, now people used to say me, ma'am, if once we have used some css which is already defined in bootstrap, can't we bring out some changes in that css? You can bring out the changes in that css. You have to open the root file, the root css file, and you can bring out the changes. Fine. So if you have the idea, if you have the knowledge about the css, if you have some knowledge about the programming language, you can make it as a customizable template as well. Fine. So here is the download paths I have given for bootstrap. Currently bootstrap 5, the version 5 is in the market, but because it is a sort of a beta version only, because some changes are already being done. If I can just see the github, in github, daily almost on daily basis, some changes are basically being brought in this bootstrap 5. So according to me, it is not very much stable version. So that's why I prefer to just work on bootstrap 4, and that is what I'm just going to tell you guys today. Fine. So we are going to work on HTML4, but if you, sorry, Bootstrap 4, but if you want to basically work on Bootstrap 5, you can also download the stuff. But again, I'm repeating, it is bit not stable. So you will find some sort of errors, but why that error arises, that is somewhat dicey, because you are not going to understand that what is the exact reason for that particular error. Fine. So I would thus recommend to work on Bootstrap 4. So yeah, the I had already told you that in bootstrap there are different components and helpers which we have to work across. So now practically we are just going to start with the bootstrap. Fine. I hope till now it is very much clear and you don't have any sort of questions. Should I start the practical session? Hello? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. So I am just going to start the practical session of this, and I would always recommend that whenever you have to work on HTML or might be on any front end framework of HTML, try to use Sublime as a editor, or might be try to use as Dreamweaver as your editor rather than working on Notepad, because on Notepad you are not going to come across that what sort of errors you are just going to face in that language, because you know these are the syntax errors, and figuring out the syntax errors is quite critical. Fine. So anyhow, I used to work in Dreamweaver. So I am just trying to open the HTML file. This is the HTML file. And if my screen is visible, so you might be seeing, just let me make it more bigger. So if the first line you are just trying to see, it is doc type HTML public, and then a long code or a long URL actually has been placed. This is what I was just telling you, that in previous versions of HTML, this whole doc type attributes we have to incorporate to tell to the browsers or to communicate to the browsers that we are working on HTML. Fine. But in HTML5, we need not to write all this useless stuff, and we have to just simply type doc type as HTML. So this is one big advantage of HTML5. Anyhow, now I'm just going to go to my internet screen, and what I'm just going to write is download Bootstrap 4. Already I have given you the path for that particular thing. Simply you have to just click on that download bootstrap 4. See, there are two ways in which you can work on bootstrap, and I'm just going to tell you the most simplistic way which will make your life easier. First is simply just download the source. Once you are just going to download, it is just going to give you one folder, and in that folder you will have a CSS folder and JS folder. Fine. So you have to create one index file, obviously one HTML file, where you have to incorporate the links, or you have to embed the links of that JS file and that CSS file. This is one way how you can work on that bootstrap. But actually we developers try, because our everything is on like whatever the things we are working, it is live. So we people actually prefer that rather than just downloading the softwares and then trying to work onto that. What we used to do, simply just go to introduction. See, if you might be seeing my screen, you have to simply go to introduction panel. Fine. And under introduction panel, you are just going to see a starter template. This is a starter template. Simply copy that particular thing. Copy this and paste in your browser, whatever, sorry, in your editor, in whatever editor you are working. So you can see it has a doc type HTML, whatever the other things are. It has a meta tag, which depicts that we are just going to use the characters set of UTF-8. This is also important because when we have to work across different languages, like if I have to create a website in French language, or might be in Chinese language, or might be in different languages, we have to define the character set. So UTF-8 actually incorporates a lot much of characters. So it is almost going to define that we are just going to work across different character sets. Fine. This is the important line or important tag, which is just going to make your website responsive. So what it is trying to say, just see that it says it is a meta tag first of all. Then it has tried to give a name as viewport. The name of this tag of meta tag is the viewport. Means whatever the properties which we are just going to apply through this particular tag, it would be applied on the viewport. Fine. Then this is important thing, content. Content says width is equal to device width. It says means whatever the things we are just going to apply on viewport, it is just going to take the shape of the viewport device. In other sense, what I can just tell you, what it means, it is trying to say that uh, it is just whatever the content you are just trying to create, it is just going to it is just going to take the shape of the device. Device means if you are working on your mobile phone, if you might be working on your iPad, or if you might be working on your desktop, or might be working on your laptop, it is going to take the shape, or means the width of that particular device. Fine. And then is the initial scale is equal to 1. It means as soon as you are just going to open that particular page in your browser, it would be opened in a maximized state. Means your page would be opened as maximized rather than in a minimized state. If you will write it as 0, it would be opened as in minimized state. Fine. And shrink to fit is no, because it is not shrinking the page. It is just fitting the device across the width of that particular device. So this is the complete, you can say, magical meta tag property, which is just going to make your website responsive. Fine. So even if you're working simply on your HTML, you can use that particular command, and you will see it is trying to make your web page a little bit responsive. But see, this is not the whole, I'm not saying this is the complete thing which is making your website responsive, because in Bootstrap there are some, we have to actually create responsive CSS as well, which is already being created by Bootstrap at the back end. So but this is one line which can make your web page a little bit responsive as well. Fine. Okay. Now you can see what it has tried to do. It has just tried to embed a style sheet. Which style sheet? Bootstrap.min.css. So if I'm just going to open the folder, I have already downloaded Bootstrap 4. Fine. If my screen is visible, whatever the folder I'm trying to show you.
Ma'am, please zoom in.
The folder.
Yeah, screen actually they are showing very little bit.
Okay. But right now I'm just trying to show you a folder. Is that folder visible?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay. So it is just a simple thing. What I'm just trying to tell you, whenever you are just going to download Bootstrap, these are two folders, CSS and JS. These are the two folders which are just going to come across when you will download Bootstrap. And under CSS, if you will see, there are a lot many files, but we have to actually give the path of bootstrap.min, this bootstrap.min.css. Fine. And similarly, if you will see the code, the next file it has incorporated, or the script it has incorporated. Just forget about this slim.min.js and all about things. If you're not even, if you're just going to delete these files, still the Bootstrap will work. But the important thing here is your bootstrap.min.js. So actually you have to embed two files. One is your JavaScript file whose name is bootstrap.min.js, and second is your CSS file which is bootstrap.min.css. And both these files you are just going to get when you are just going to download your Bootstrap. So this is one way. And the second way which I am telling you is simply we had copy pasted the starter template. And this template, actually this particular file, now you need not to just download the Bootstrap CSS on your local PC or on your local server. You simply have to just copy paste all this content, and you can see actually it is using one URL link, and the URL link is actually from CDN. CDN is Content Delivery Network. This is actually, you can say, a sort of, it is something like your GitHub, or something like what you can call it as a programmer's hub, where they used to put across different sort of codes. So it has just taken the URL from CDN, and it has just placed that stuff here. Fine. So whenever we used to work on Bootstrap, we simply used to just copy this starter template and we start working onto that, because in that case we need not to download Bootstrap. Fine. It is, everything is online, so we have to just work online, we have to just test the things online. So that's why we used to work on this starter template. Fine. I think this might be somewhat clear to you that how you have to use the Bootstrap. Fine. So I am just telling you the most simplistic thing. Fine. So rather than downloading, use this particular thing. Anyhow, now we are just going to start working on your Bootstrap. Okay. So let me just make my screen bigger. See, I had already told you in Bootstrap, there are different components, there are different helpers, which we have to use and with which we are just going to create a website. Fine. The very first thing which you have to understand about Bootstrap is the grid system of Bootstrap. That is the most important thing. Now, what exactly is the grid system? You can yourself understand grid is a sort of a matrix which has some sort of rows and columns. Fine. So actually Bootstrap works on a grid system. Fine. So forget about anything. Just remember one thing, that in Bootstrap, there are 12 columns. Means you have one page, your whole page is actually divided into 12 columns. Fine. Keep that particular thing in mind and you will understand what the grid system is. I have just tried to make one table here, if it is visible. So what I have done, I have just tried to show that it is a sort of a web page, complete web page, where we have 12 columns. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 columns and your page is divided into 12 columns. See, there is no any like hard and fast rule that how many rows you are just going to have. But yes, there is a hard and fast rule that your columns should be 12. Fine. Now, how you have to use that 12 columns, it actually depends upon you. So see, in the second row, I have just tried to show you that there are three actually columns which are spanned across four columns. Like I have just tried to create three columns, and the width of those is like 4, 4, and 4. It is 4, 4, 8, and this is 12. Similarly, this is 8 and 4, this is 6 and 6, then you have 12. Similarly, you can make the other combinations like 8 and 3. Means you have to make whatever the combination you want, you can make, but you have to keep in mind that the total number of columns should be 12. Fine. Okay. So what is the purpose of this particular thing? The purpose is because you have to create the responsive website. Responsive website means, if let us suppose I am trying to make something for my mobile, or might be trying to make something for my laptop or desktop, and I have created these 12 columns. So these 12 columns are just going to adjust its width according to the width of the device. Fine. So this is what I just tried to write it down, that using Bootstrap grid system, we can create the page which will have different layout on desktop and tablet mobile device. You might be seeing this is for the desktop layout, but when I'm just going to use that particular thing on tablet or might be on mobile, it is just going to take the shape of that particular device. That is the purpose of the grid system. Now, how you have to create the grid system in Bootstrap? Actually, we have to create three things for creating the grid system. One is the container, second is the row, and third is the column. Fine. So you can understand this particular concept in the sense, if you might have worked in the tables, we used to create first of all a table tag. Then under that, we used to create the table row, and under that, we used to create the table data. Th was it was not a mandatory tag. So same is the case with the grid system. Firstly, you have to create a container in which those rows and columns would be there. Then you have to create a row, and then you have to create a column. Fine, and the column should be 12 in number. So this is the another thing. The third important thing which we have to understand in Bootstrap is something about the breakpoints. Breakpoints, or you can say as important classes. See, I had already told you that you are using Bootstrap because you want to make some sort of responsive website. Responsive means it is just going to look different. No, I'm not going to use the word different, but I'm just trying to say that it is just going to take the shape of the device, whatever you are using. So for that, we actually need some sort of a classes or breakpoints to incorporate in the code so that my code could understand that it is just going to take the shape of what sort of devices, or how many devices, or what all devices should be included. So these are the breakpoints. So if let us suppose you are using Bootstrap for small devices like pager or other sort of a thing, we are going to use the breakpoint as x small, and the class there is we are not going to use any class for that. It is somewhat understandable to Bootstrap that if we have not written anything, it is just going to be applicable for your small devices. And the small devices dimensions I have just tried to give, it is 0 to 576 pixels. Then comes small. For small, you have to write a class sm, and it is for the dimension has already been given if it is greater than equal to 576 but less than equal to 768. So it is something like your what you can call it as the previous sort of mobile phones which have smaller screens. So those are the small screens. Medium is something you can call it as your iPads or iPods. So if you have to use that sort of stuff, we are just going to use the class as MD. If you basically want to create the Bootstrap pages for the large devices are something your laptops and desktops, and the class which we are going to use is LG, and for extra large it would be XL. Extra large is something like for it has to be actually visible on your theater screens or on big screens, so that is the extra large devices. Fine. Anyhow, so this is the first thing. This is the basic things about the grid system. Just let me just show you the code, then I'm just going to do another thing. Now, if you have to create some containers in Bootstrap, you have to keep in mind that in Bootstrap, there are two type of containers or two type of container classes on which we can work. One is a fixed width container, and second is the fluid class. Fixed width and second is fluid class. Fixed width means the container which is just going to have a fixed width. Fine. And fluid is which is just going to span across the entire width of the viewport. Fine. Because actually I used to take near about 3 to 4 days to let you understand about the Bootstrap. So we don't have that much time. So that's why I have just tried to come out with some sort of a code which we are going to use. So I am going to use this particular code, and I'm going to tell you the purpose and how we have used that particular thing. So under body section, I am just copying and pasting this particular code. I had told you that if you have to work in the grid system, the first thing what you have to create is the container. And there are two type of containers. One is fixed width and second is fluid. Fluid means which is just going to span across the full width. Fine. So now how you have to create the container? Simply you are creating a div then you're making a class and you're naming that class as container, and whatever the thing or content you basically want to write, you can write it down, and we are just closing the div tag. It means it is just going to create one container. Fine. What I'm trying to say, it is just going to create one container. Fine. Container, just let me show you, but I think it is not going to that much visible. Let me first save the file. And I am just going to save that particular file on my root directory, fine, which I have already created. Let me make it as index1. Fine. And we are just going to run that file. Currently, it is not going to be that much visible. Let me just... So this is a sort of a thing which it has tried to create. Okay. But responsive, first of all, I'm just trying to show you something about a responsive. So if you will see, it is just going to take the shape of a device. My content is adjusted according to my width size, but container is not that much visible. So for making it visible, I have to bring out some changes here, because right now container is not visible. So what I'm just going to do, I will tell you what the things I'm just trying to do. I'm just giving a primary, I'm just trying to give a background color to that. And the class for that is BG, and there are different parameters. But currently I'm just writing something, and I will tell you what all those things are. Currently, just try to bear that with me. You have to simply create a container, and to just make that particular thing visible, I am just trying to create I'm just trying to assign the background color, and I'm just trying to assign the text color. Fine. And I'm just saving that file, and we are just going to see. If I have given any title tag, it is being given. Have I saved the file at the correct place? And if I'm using the right path, I don't think so. Just let me see. Yeah, that is the problem. Because files, I have used some different thing, and I'm using a different location. Index 2. Yeah. So now you can see the page is visible. Fine. And what it has tried to do is it has make the container as a fixed width container, because it is coming in between your screen. Fine. And I have just tried to give a background color and a text color to make it visible. Otherwise, container is simply a hidden sort of a thing, and all those background colors are not going to be visible. So this is what do you meant by term a fixed width container. Now, what I'm just trying to do, I'm just trying to make that container as fluid. Fluid means it is just going to take the shape of a complete screen. So what I'm just going to do, what parameter I have to write, container dash fluid. This is the name of the class. Simply you have to just write that particular thing, and this BG color and the text color I have just given to give it a background and to just give it a text color. I will just tell you what all those properties are, but anyhow, I'm just trying to tell you something about the container, and now I'm just going to make it as F5 so you can see what it has done. Now, this container class has been created, and it has actually took the shape of a complete viewport. I hope this might be clear what I'm just trying to tell you. Is it clear to everybody? Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah, it's clear, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So this is something about your container. Fine. So firstly, you have to create the container. So now this is very much clear to us. Okay. Just let me close all the stuff. Now, the second thing is about the rows and the columns which you have to create. Fine. We have created a container, and container could be of two types. One is your fluid and second is the fixed width. We had tried to create that particular thing. Now, if you can see, I have tried to give a simple code. Firstly, I will create a container, then I will create a row, and under that row, I have to create the columns. Now, how you will create the columns? This is the syntax. Simply, you have to write the class as col dash sm means the small device. Already I had told you can use sm, md, lg, xl. Fine. So right now I'm just trying to make it as compatible with the small device as well. So I'm just trying to write sm4, sm8. You can simply write down here as col lg, whatever you want to give. It could be 8. It means for SM device, it would be 4 columns. For LG, for large devices, it would be equal to 8 columns. Fine. And LG here would be 4. Means you can just try to give the combinations here in this particular line. But currently, I'm not making the things as confusing. I'm just going to simply use this SM command. So you can see the total of this is 12. The total of the columns, I had already told you that the total of columns should be your 12. How many like rows you want to create, you can just create it down. But the total should be 12. So I have just written a code. I have created a div class. First of all, I have created a container, which is fluid container. Then after that, I have created a row. Then under that, just let me make, I think it is not that much visible. Yeah, I have created a container. After container, I have created a row, and after created the row, I have just tried to create this columns, 2 different columns. One is of the width of one column is 4 and the width of another column is 8. Fine. So I'm just simply going to use that particular thing to make it visible. So underneath that, I'm simply copy pasting that stuff. And under that SM, some internal CSS has already been given. So I am actually not using that internal CSS. I'm just removing that to make your life more easier, because otherwise it would be a bit difficult for you to understand that what we are trying to do. Just remove that particular thing. And I'm just copying, pasting these properties so that the things should be a bit visible to me. Just forget about what I'm just doing with BG and the text color, but just try to understand that what we are doing, we are creating a container, then we are creating a row, then we are just trying to create the columns, and the class is call dash sm dash 4, or it could be call dash lg dash 4 or md dash 4, whatever the things you basically want. Fine. And now we are just going to see. So you can see it has actually created 2 columns. The first column width is 4 and the second column width is 8. So you can see actually what is happening. So this is the width of the columns which we have tried to create. I hope this might be clear to you guys. Fine. So this is how we have to create the columns in Bootstrap. Fine. After that, if I will go ahead, I have to work across the typography. Typography is how you're just going to write the fonts and the text in Bootstrap. By default, Bootstrap actually uses a font size of 16 pixels, or which is actually equal to 1 REM. In Bootstrap, we actually use the term REM. Fine, 1 REM is equal to 16 pixel. Remember that particular thing. And the line width is 1.5, means the width between 2 lines or line spacing is 1.5 line height, what it is trying to say. And the default font family it is just going to use is Helvetica family. Fine, which is a sans serif family. So it is just going to use that particular thing. So this is the general things which we have to understand. Now I'm just simply going to tell you something about the typography of Bootstrap. Then we are just going to use the code. First of all, the major typographic class which it is just going to use is the h1 to h6 tags, which you might be very much aware about HTML, h1 to h6 tags. So how it is going to use those h1 to h6 tags is simply you have to create a container, and under that particular container you can just give h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, h6 tags. Fine, but it should be under container. If you want that code to work in Bootstrap, you have to mandatorily create a container. Either way, if you don't want to create the row and the columns, it's up to you, but you have to create a container if you basically want that code to actually appear in Bootstrap. Fine. Anyhow, so you can here see that H1 here means 2.5 REM. 2.5 REM means 2.5 into 16, which makes it as a 40 pixel. So your text would be of 40 pixel if you are just going to give it a tag of H1. H2 is 2 REM, which is 2 into 16, which is 32 pixels. Similarly, H3 is there, H4 is there, H5 is there, H6 is there. This is something about the H1 to H6. Then second thing, which is important in Bootstrap, is about the display headings. See, H1 to H6, you might have worked in HTML. They are bolder text. The text content is quite bolder when we are just trying to give H1 tag. And it is quite big as well. And H6 is the smallest tag. But still the font style is bold in H1 to H6. But sometimes we need our content to be bold, but not exactly bold. Sometimes we actually need our content to be lightweighted, but it should be in bigger size. So for that, they have just tried to give out some classes, which is known as your display classes. So there are actually 4 display classes in Bootstrap. One is display 1, second is display 2, third is display 3, and fourth is display 4. And these classes actually works in your heading tags. Fine. So if you have to let them work properly, you should use the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, 6 tags. And simply you have to give a class display 1, display 2, display 3, or display 4, whatever the things you basically want. This is something about the display classes. Then we are just trying to talk something about the font styles. There are different font styles which has given in Bootstrap. Like if you want to make your content bold, you can use the class font dash weight dash bold. It would make your content as bold. If you want to make the content as normal, what you have to do is font dash weight dash normal. If you want to make it as lightweight, you can give it as font dash weight dash light, and lighter, it would be font dash weight dash lighter. And if you want to make it italic, it is font dash italic. So see, I had already told you it is all about copy paste. Bootstrap, nothing much you are trying to do in Bootstrap, but this is what you are trying to do in Bootstrap. Means you are trying to copy paste the stuff. But let us suppose if you want to bring out some changes in the container. I just want to bring out some changes in the margins of container. I have to open my bootstrap.min.css, and I can just bring out the changes in the container class, which is going to be placed there. Fine. Anyhow. This is something about the font styles. Then something about the typography styles, means how you are just going to align your text. If you want to left align your text, you can simply write text dash left. If you want to right align, text dash right, center is dash center, text dash justify is for justification. Fine. So this is something about your typographic styles. Fine. So as I'm just going to give you the PPT, so you can just try all those things by your own. But I'm just going to use this display class because this is somewhat important, and it will actually make the things a bit easier for you as well to understand that how the display classes work. I'm simply copy pasting the stuff. You can see it is a nice big fonts, but the fonts are lightweight. They are not bolded content. But if we are just going to use H1 to H6 tags, they are quite bold. Fine. So this is what I'm just trying to show. If you basically want the display properties, or if you want some sort of a lightweighted font, you can use this display properties, display 1, display 2, display 3, and display 4. Okay. I hope this might be clear. Now, the important thing which we have to do, you can copy paste all this stuff which is there. I have already written the complete code. The important thing which we are just now going to discuss is about the Jumbotron. Jumbotron is a very nice thing. It is a predefined, you can say, box which has been created in Bootstrap, which is gray in color. and you need not to do anything in that. What you have to do, you have to simply write the class as Jumbotron. That's it. Create a container, under that create a Jumbotron as a class, and just whatever the text you want to write, just write it down. So I'm just going to copy paste the stuff and simply just writing that. Might be all this things I'm just going to remove, and I'm just going to make a paragraph. I'm just trying to copy paste some stuff from here and just closing the paragraph. The div for both these things have been closed. And another thing, I have to just remove the extra stuff. Saving the file. And if we will see, you can see what it has done. It has created a nice box which is rounded from edges. It is gray in color. You can't, in Jumbotron actually the default color size is gray, but if you want to bring out the changes in the color, you have to open the bootstrap.min.jss, and under that you have to change the background color of Jumbotron class. Fine. Anyhow, but it is actually gray in color. This is the purpose with which they had just tried to create it down. So you actually, if frankly speaking, if in HTML5, in HTML actually, if you have to create this sort of a box, you have to write a lot much of coding because it has a rounded edges as well. Fine. So you have to actually bring those edges as image, and then actually you have to work across. Fine. So that is actually the you can say advantage of Bootstrap. You have not done anything. You have simply write the div class as Jumbotron, and it has created a nice gray color background. Anyhow, the next thing is very important, which is regarding the colors and the background colors. Again, I am just saying Shift F5 to make it bigger. See, if you have to give the different text colors to your fonts or to your text, what you have to do, you need not to give style as color background or as colors or something like. You simply have to incorporate few classes which are predefined in Bootstrap, and these classes are dot text, muted, primary, success, info, warning, danger, secondary, white, dark, body, and light. Fine. These are the classes, the main classes for text colors. Fine. And it is just going to give you different colors. Fine. Muted is somewhat gray in color. Primary is somewhat blue in color. Your danger is somewhat red in color. Warning is somewhat orange in color. White is going to be your white color text. Text dark is somewhat, it will make it as a black. Text body, it is just going to make it as a black color text. So these are the properties. Now how you are just going to use, simply create a container, and under that, let us suppose you want to give the text color to a paragraph. So we have created a paragraph class which is text muted, and we have just write the text. Similarly, we have just write text primary, text success, text info, text warning, danger, secondary, dark, body, light, white. This is just to show you an example, but whatever the color you want to give, you can give it across. So I'm simply, what I'm just going to do, I'm copy pasting the stuff, and we are going to see how it looks like. So see, this might be visible to you. There are different colors which has been assigned. So muted is gray in color. Then the next is primary, which is blue in color. Then you have green color. Then you have lavender green. Then this danger is red in color. So I had already told you that you have not given the color code. Means you have not assigned any color, but simply you have wrote the class as text dash muted, and it has converted your text into gray color. And simply you have written as text dash primary, so it has actually converted that text into blue in color. So this is something what is happening in your Bootstrap. Fine. Similarly, you have the background colors on the basis of same parameters. So if I will just show you, Shift F5. So these are the classes for background colors. Rather than writing text, you have to write BG. So BG dash primary, BG dash success, BG dash info, BG dash warning, BG dash danger, BG dash secondary, BG dash dark, and BG dash light, which are equivalent to your text class properties, which we have done previously. So I have a code for that. and I'm just going to copy paste that particular stuff there. And then I'm just trying to tell you what actually the code is. So you can see I have created a div class container, and under that, because I basically want to create a background for a paragraph. So what I have done, I have created a class p class, and I have given it a property as bg primary. Fine. And now whatever text I want to write, primary is blue in color. Fine. So for that, I have make my text as white. BG success text at white means in that particular sense, I have just tried to incorporate two properties. One is the background color and second is the text color. Fine. So this is what we have done, and we are just going to see how it looks like. Just let me. So you can see these are the backgrounds. Fine. So this is blue in color and your text is white, green in color and your text is white, and all of the type of a thing. And here I have just make the background as gray color, but the text color is black, obviously, because it is not going to be visible otherwise. So what property we have tried to give? BG is light, but text is dark. Fine. So if you're just going to understand these properties, actually you have to simply understand the facts that how you have to incorporate or you have to include all those classes. You can create the nice and stunned looking websites from this Bootstrap, and you can yourself see this doesn't require much programming. Fine, but actually when we used to do development, we have to do a lot much of programming. We have to play around with the CSS, but this is for the layman, that how you can work around with the Bootstrap. Fine. Then the next thing what we are just going to do is something about the images, how you have to work with the images. This is another important thing. In Bootstrap, you can work with three style of images. One is you can make them rounded, second is you can make them circular, and third is you can make them into a form of a thumbnails. Fine. So what class you have to create? Simply you have to just write down as class as rounded for rounded rectangle. For circle, it should be rounded dash circle. And for thumbnail, it should be as thumbnail. That's it. Image tag you have used as it is. You have incorporated the source, and under that you have created a class as rounded, and the all text you have given, you the width and height you have assigned. So it is a normal image tag which we are trying to use, and I'm just trying to use all these image classes here. And simply I'm just going to copy paste. This is in my images folder, and under my images folder there is one JPEG file which is there. Fine. So I'm just trying to show you how it look like. I think I have not saved the text. Okay, there is a problem. Problem is, yeah, the problem is my image is placed here. Let me copy that and just bring out here, and just let me change the path. Fine. And now we are just going to see, make it F5 so you can see the images. The first image is, if you will see on your screen, it has some rounded rectangles across its borders. Then it is circular, and then thumbnail has a nice, you can say, a border across your picture. So that is how these images actually work in your Bootstrap. Because otherwise, if you have to create the rounded rectangle, or if you have to make a picture circular, or if you have to create a border across your images, we have to actually use a lot much of programming. But here you have simply seen that we have given three classes, and those three classes have shown their magic. Fine. After that, the another thing which we have to work across is regarding buttons. This is again one of the important thing which you should be aware about. Buttons is, if you want to create some sort of a button, you might be aware about that in HTML. If we have to create a button, and if you have to give some styles, we have to use a lot much of CSS. But here in Bootstrap, you need not to do anything. Simply you have to create a button, and for creating a button, what is the property? You have to create a form element, and the form element is the button. The button type is button, means its type is button, and the class what you have to give is btn. As soon as you are just going to write as btn as a class, it means you are just trying to create a button. Fine. And then there are different colors for those buttons. Primary, you might remember from that text and BG. Primary is your blue color, then secondary, success, info, warning is your red color. Warning is your orange color, danger is your red color, dark is your black color, light is your gray color. So it is just going to create different type of buttons with different colors. So I am just going to use it as it is. Fine. And let me just see how it look like. F5, and you can see these colors are visible. Fine. Hello. Hello.
Visible, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and my screen is also visible.
Yes.
So you can see there are different button styles, and you have not done anything. You have just simply write or simply called the classes which are there in the library of Bootstrap, and it has tried to create different type of buttons. Fine. And beside that particular thing, I'm just leaving it out here. Another important thing which we can do is how you can create the button groups means right now, if you can just look into these buttons are individual buttons. Fine. But I sometimes I want to create that particular thing in a sort of a group, means they are just linked close to each other rather than having these margins and all other type of a thing. So for that we need to create some sort of a group. So for creating a group, what we have to do, simply we have to create a container. Then the div class which I'm just going to give is btn dash group, and then the same thing, the btn primary, whatever the other buttons you want, simply you have to give a class as btn group. It is just going to tell to the browser that now buttons would act as group rather than working as individual buttons. So I'm just going to copy that and simply pasting the stuff. And here I am just going to make it as warning and just making it as secondary to make it little bit different. And we are just going to see how it look like. So you can see it has created a group. 3 buttons have been created and they are just linked to each other. Fine. So this is a group. Now, if let us suppose I want to make this particular thing as vertical. So what I can do, simply I can just write vertical after my btn dash group. I'm just simply writing vertical. So if I will see how it look like. So you can see it has made the buttons as vertical. Fine. So this is actually how you are working on the Bootstrap. This is a very basic glimpse of Bootstrap. There are a lot many other things what we have to do. If I might have one another lecture or something like, I actually had tried to create one complete web page by using Bootstrap, but as we don't have much time, so I think this is all what we have to do with the Bootstrap. I will just give you this particular PPT so that you are just going to work around with the helpers and with the components. And beside that, if you want to learn about the Bootstrap, the best thing what you can do is you can just go to W3C website, and there you have a very good tutorials and all other, you can say, content available for Bootstrap. Beside that particular thing, Bootstrap website, which from where you have downloaded the Bootstrap, it also has a very good sort of examples, and even it has some very good sort of content available. You simply have to go to content, and there you are just going to see the headings, the list, how you can create list, how you can create tables, forms in Bootstrap. All those type of stuff is basically being typography, how you have to use that, code, images, means they have also tried to give a lot much of examples which you can use, and with which you can actually try to create some stunning websites. I had, I think, might be not sure, but actually I had just tried to create one thing for you so that you can try that particular thing. Yeah, this is the very basic template which I used to give to my audience. so that they can work across. So you can see this is the jumbotron I have created, and under that I have used the heading tag and the another simple text tags. Then this is a navigation bar I have just tried to create. This is something about two columns what I have just tried to create. This is the width is 4, this is 8. Then accordingly we have just tried to create some buttons, some headings, and then for footer also I had just tried to create a jumbotron. So see, by using few elements you can create a complete web page. And the another advantage is, if you are just going to see this page, it is responsive. It is responsive means it is taking the shape of the device, the width of the device. So that is the magic, or you can say the power of Bootstrap. And I hope you might have got something new regarding the Bootstrap.